"Get inside first," she whispered. The rancher didn't know he'd ride home with a wife. The sun on Red Mesa always looked bigger than it should. It hung low and wide in the orange sky, turning the dust into a glowing sea of gold. Calder Horn rode his solar-powered hoverbike along the edge of his land, the wind brushing against his face and the quiet hum of the engine filling the silence. He liked this time of day. The cattle were settled, the drones were returning to their charging posts, and the world felt calm for a few precious moments. Red Mesa was not a rich world. It was dry, rough, and far from the shining cities of the human core systems, but it was home. Calder had built his ranch with his own hands, one wall and one fence at a time. The land did not care who you were or where you came from. It only cared if you worked hard enough to stay. As he slowed near the perimeter fence, Calder checked his wrist display. The motion sensors showed nothing moving for miles. No wildlife, no ships, no storms. That was good. The frontier could change in a heartbeat, and quiet usually meant trouble was resting, not gone. He guided the hoverbike to a stop and looked out over the wide plains. His bioengineered cattle grazed in small groups, their thick hides glowing faintly under the light of the sun. They were worth more than most ships in this sector. That was why he had the fence. That was why he had the sensors. And that was why he never left his sidearm at home. Calder was about to turn back when he saw movement near the far edge of the fence. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light. The dust and heat often played with the eyes. But then he saw the shape clearly. A person was standing there, hands resting on the metal posts, head bowed low. Calder's heart beat faster. Nobody walked across Red Mesa, not without a vehicle, not without protection. He eased off the bike and took slow steps forward, his hand resting near his belt. "Hey," he called, his voice echoed across the open land. "You lost!" The person lifted her head. She was a woman, but not like any woman Calder had seen before. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her eyes reflected the light like polished glass. Her clothes were torn and covered in dust, but they were made of material far beyond anything sold on a frontier world. She looked at him, fear and urgency clear on her face. "Get inside first," she whispered. The words barely reached him, carried by the wind. Calder frowned. "What?" Before she could answer, his wrist display buzzed hard against his skin. Red warning lights flashed across the screen. Unidentified ships, high orbit. Calder's stomach dropped. He turned his head toward the sky. Far above, dark shapes moved against the orange glow of the sun. They were not human ships. They were sleek, curved, and silent like shadows sliding through the air. He looked back at the woman. "Inside, now," she said again, louder this time. Calder did not ask questions. He grabbed the gate control and slammed his thumb down. The fence opened, and he waved her through. She moved fast, running past him as he turned and hit the control again. The metal post slid back into place just as a low hum filled the air. They ran. Calder led her toward the ranch house, a strong, wide building made from reinforced steel and stone. He slapped his hand against the door panel, and it slid open. The two of them rushed inside, and Calder hit the lock command. The house sealed itself with a deep, solid sound. They stood in the main room, breathing hard. Calder leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself. The woman bent over, hands on her knees, her long hair falling forward. "What in the stars is going on?" Calder asked. She straightened and looked at him. "You should not have brought me in. You showed up at my fence with ships in the sky," he said. "That makes it my problem." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I am Saris Vale. I am an envoy of the Coalition of Stars." Calder blinked. The Coalition of Stars was not just powerful, it was ancient. Its reach covered half the known galaxy. "An envoy," he said. "What are you doing on my dirt patch of a planet?" "Running," she answered. A low vibration passed through the walls of the house. Calder turned and looked at the ceiling. The lights flickered. "They found you," he said. Saris nodded. "Yes." Calder walked over to the control panel near the window. He pulled up the external camera feed. One of the alien ships had dropped lower, hovering just above the ranch. Its surface shimmered with soft blue light. "Why?" Calder asked. "Why are they chasing you?" Saris hesitated. "Because I refused to deliver my people into a war they did not choose." Calder stared at the screen. "That's a big problem to bring to my doorstep." "I did not choose your doorstep," she said. "But you opened your gate." A sharp sound cut through the air. The front window darkened as an energy field spread across it. The house's defense system activated on its own. Calder frowned. "That's not me." Saris's eyes widened slightly. Then the bond has already been recognized. The what? The lights in the room shifted and a soft tone echoed from the ceiling. A calm, mechanical voice spoke. Shelter protocol engaged, protected individual recognized. Sanctuary bond established. Calder spun around. No, 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 you don't just decide things like that. Saris looked at him with something close to shock. You do not know what you have done. Yeah, I'm getting that feeling, Calder said. The ship outside lowered even more. A beam of light touched the ground near the house, sending dust into the air. Saris stepped closer to Calder. In the law of the Coalition, if a citizen of another species brings a protected envoy into their home and seals the door, they claim responsibility for them. Calder rubbed his face. Responsibility like don't let them get hurt, or responsibility like I just signed my life away? Saris did not answer right away. The beam of light outside shifted, scanning the walls of the house. Calder felt the vibration in his boots. You signed your life to mine, she said quietly. Calder laughed once, short and sharp. That's not how things work. That is exactly how it works, Saris said. The bond is legal, public, recognized by the Coalition's network. You are now my protector. Protector I can handle, Calder said. What else does that mean? Saris met his eyes. It means in your language you are my husband. The word hit Calder harder than any weapon. What? He said. Before Saris could explain, a new voice filled the room. It came from the ranch's communication system, deep and smooth, speaking in perfect human speech. Calder Horn of Red Mesa, release the protected envoy and step outside. Calder stepped closer to the window, staring at the dark shape of the ship. Or what? Or your land will be marked as hostile territory, the voice replied. Calder felt something rise in his chest, not fear, not anger, something older and stronger. This land is already mine, he said. You don't get to mark it. Saris watched him, her expression changing. She had seen warriors, leaders, and rulers across the galaxy, but this was different. This was a man standing in his own home, on his own ground, and refusing to move. The ship outside did not fire. The beam of light pulled back. There was a long moment of silence. Then the voice spoke again. The bond has been logged. We will return. The ship rose into the sky, joining the others as they faded into the light of the sun. The house grew quiet. Calder let out a slow breath and leaned against the wall. Well, he said, that was a day. Saris looked around the simple room, the worn table, the old chairs, the pictures of open land on the walls. You do not understand what you have started, she said softly. Calder shrugged. I started a long time ago, fence by fence. Saris studied him. My people believe power comes from fleets and laws. Calder walked to the window and looked out at his cattle, still grazing, calm and unaware of the ships that had just threatened their world. Mine comes from staying, he said. Saris felt something shift inside her. She had crossed stars and spoken to rulers who commanded millions, but none of them had sounded as certain as this man standing in his quiet home on a forgotten planet. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the land in deep orange and red. And somewhere in the vast network of the galaxy, a new record had been written. A human rancher had claimed a coalition envoy, not with a weapon, but with a door. The night on Red Mesa was cold, sharper than Calder expected. The wind had picked up, whistling past the edges of his home, and the stars above looked impossibly bright against the black sky. Inside, the lights of the house glowed soft and warm. Calder sat across from Saris Vale at the old wooden table, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug of nutrient tea. She was quieter now, calmer than before, but the tension in her shoulders did not leave. Sit, Calder said finally. You're not going anywhere tonight. Not until we figure this out. Saris obeyed. She perched on the edge of the chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her gaze wandered around the room, noting the small comforts of human life, worn chairs, a faded rug, and a stack of paper books. None of it matched the technology she was used to, none of it even remotely mattered in a galaxy of fleets and treaties. And yet she felt safe here in a way she hadn't felt in years. They'll come back, she said softly, sooner or later. And next time they won't be asking nicely. Calder leaned back in his chair. He traced the rim of his mug with a thumb. I get it, you're scared, but there's something they don't seem to understand. You can't just threaten a human in his home. It's not how we work. You want obedience, you want fear, you get nothing but respect for effort, and if you try to push us out, we push back. Saris tilted her head, studying him. Respect for effort, he shrugged. You work hard, you survive, you defend what's yours, that's our law. That's the only law we need. The alien ships above had left the perimeter, but Calder could still feel their presence. His sensors were not sleeping. They hovered at the edges of the system, watching, waiting. He knew the next encounter would be worse. They would not give up easily, not for someone as important as Saris. "I need to explain something," Saris said. "About the bond, you don't just protect me. Legally, in the eyes of the Coalition, you are bound to me. That means you must provide safety, guidance, and loyalty. The moment anyone violates the bond, the punishment is severe." Calder raised an eyebrow. "Severe? Like what? They'll bring their fleet down and take me apart." "They could," she admitted. "But worse, they could take my freedom away, and then all your efforts to protect me would be meaningless. The bond exists to protect the envoy, not you. If you fail, they will see you as nothing more than a failed human. They do not forgive failure easily." Calder looked out the window at the desert, glowing faintly under the twin moons. Failure wasn't an option he liked to consider. On Red Mesa, failure meant death. On Red Mesa, survival meant ingenuity, patience, and stubbornness. It wasn't about fleets or armies. It was about knowing the land, knowing the weather, knowing the way your body could endure. That was a human's power. That was the difference between them and everyone else in the galaxy. "Tell me," Calder said, "why are you here? Why run into the middle of nowhere?" "You could have gone anywhere, any planet. Why this one?" Saris swallowed. "Because you are human, and humans do not bow so easily. They make their own rules. That is why I came here." Calder almost laughed. "You're saying I'm stubborn, that's your big plan." She gave a small, tense smile. "Not just stubborn, resilient, clever, resourceful. Humans survive where others fail because you adapt in ways no one else imagines." Calder leaned back, letting the words sink in. She was right in a way. He did not have armies. He did not have energy shields beyond what his home provided. He had the land, his cattle, his machines, and his mind, and that had been enough for decades. "All right," Calder said finally. "You're going to need more than talk to survive here. If they come back, we have to be ready, and that means preparing the ranch, the land, and—" he pointed at her. "You," Saris frowned. "Me. You're part of the plan," he said simply. "If we're going to survive this, you can't just hide. You have knowledge, experience, skills that I don't. We work together. That's how humans win together." She considered that, then nodded slowly. "Very well, I will teach, but you must be willing to learn," Calder grinned. "I learn fast when it keeps me alive." The next hours passed in quiet work. Saris began instructing Calder on the Coalition's scanning technology. Their small home had a makeshift sensor array, crude compared to alien fleets. But Calder's clever modifications allowed him to detect movement, speed, and energy signatures across miles of land. Saris explained how the fleet observed, how it communicated, and how it would strike. Calder listened carefully, asking questions, testing the limits of the sensors, and even adjusting some parts of the technology with his own human intuition. He didn't just copy instructions, he improved them. Saris watched, astonished. In her entire career, she had never seen someone combine primitive and advanced technology so seamlessly. "They're going to underestimate you," she said quietly. "Humans always do," Calder smirked. "Good, let them think that." Night passed, but sleep did not come easily. Calder walked the perimeter, checking the fences, the turrets, and the cattle. The desert air smelled faintly of iron and dust. The stars above were calm, almost too calm. He felt eyes on him, though, somewhere far beyond. He didn't need sensors to know they were watching. Saris joined him, her figure a faint shadow in the moonlight. "You're not afraid?" she asked. Calder shook his head. "Afraid doesn't keep you alive, knowing what to do does." "And I know what I'm doing." She studied him for a long time, and finally she said, "Then perhaps that is why I chose this planet, why I chose you. You are human in a way they cannot measure, and that makes you dangerous." Calder laughed softly. "Dangerous, huh? You're making me sound like a hero." "No," she said. "A survivor." The next morning, Calder awoke to the hum of the sensors and the soft glow of the rising sun. Saris was already at the table, tracing diagrams on a datapad. He walked over and she looked up at him, her expression serious. "We need to establish perimeter rules," she said. "If they come back, we cannot rely on surprise alone. We need strategy, traps, and diversions." Calder nodded. "I've got a few ideas. Fences that aren't just fences, cattle that act as decoys, and some old drones I can retrofit." Saris raised an eyebrow. "You are remarkably prepared." "Preparation is survival," Calder said. "Humans do not wait for trouble to find us. We make our own luck." They spent the day preparing the ranch. Calder's drones were upgraded with sensor extensions and rapid response protocols. Fences were reinforced and tied into energy grids, but with openings that could trap intruders without harming them. The cattle were moved strategically, their bioluminescent hides used to create false targets. Calder worked tirelessly, sweat dripping into the dirt, while Saris provided guidance and analysis. By evening, the ranch looked like something out of a legend. Not a fortress in the traditional sense, but something more human, clever, unpredictable, and perfectly tuned to its land. They paused to watch the horizon. A faint glimmer of light moved slowly in the distance, a warning sign that the fleet was already nearby. Calder's heart beat steadily. Fear did not rule him, strategy did. He had turned the land into an ally, the cattle into guardians, and the home into a fortress without walls. Saris watched him with new respect. "You are extraordinary," she said. Calder shrugged, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm just human." She smiled faintly, a small, rare gesture. "Yes, but that is enough to terrify empires." The wind shifted, carrying dust across the plains, and the twin moons rose above the horizon. Calder and Saris stood side by side, looking at the desert and the sky beyond. The battle would come. The fleet would not forget. But for now, on Red Mesa, humans had the advantage of home, ingenuity, and stubbornness. The first warning came at dawn, before the sun had fully climbed the orange sky. Calder was in the barn, checking on his cattle, when the sensors buzzed urgently. The tiny lights along the perimeter blinked red. His heart skipped a beat, but his hands remained steady. This was not the first time the fleet had circled above. This time, though, they were closer. Saris was already at the control panel, eyes scanning the data streams. Her hands moved quickly, analyzing patterns, adjusting tracking protocols. "They've divided into 3 squads," she said. "One will attempt a frontal approach, another will sweep the outer plains, and the last, they'll try infiltration." Calder frowned. "Infiltration. They don't know this land like I do, that's their weakness." "Exactly," Saris said, her voice calm but sharp, "and we're going to use it." The first squad came in silently, hovering just above the horizon. Their ships shimmered with an alien energy that made them almost invisible in the morning haze. Calder's modified drones picked them up, sending precise location data to the control panel. He adjusted a few switches, and the cattle, scattered strategically across the fields, glowed faintly, luring the ships toward the decoy positions. "Remember," Calder said, "humans don't just fight back. We confuse, we adapt, we improvise." Saris watched him carefully. "I see that now. You are unpredictable." The first squad of ships descended toward the glowing cattle, lasers primed. Calder flipped a switch, and the drones projected holographic decoys of the ranch, multiple images scattered across the plains. The ships fired, striking illusions, while the real herd moved quietly behind the ridges. Calder's grin was slow and satisfied. "They think they're clever. They're not. They're just methodical. And humans are chaos." Saris felt a thrill she had not felt in years. The coalition relied on strict order and overwhelming force. They underestimated unpredictability. And that unpredictability, combined with Calder's intimate knowledge of the land, made him a force they could not calculate. The second squad approached from the side, scanning the desert with high-energy beams. Calder ran to the perimeter, activating the traps he had set the previous day. Low-energy pulses surged across the fences, harmless to humans and cattle but capable of disrupting alien systems. The ships wavered mid-flight, their sensors confused. Calder adjusted the energy levels, watching as 2 of the vessels were forced to retreat. Saris's eyes widened. "You did that with simple grids and pulses? That should not work against them." Calder shrugged, wiping dust from his hands. "Simple works when they expect complicated. They overthink, we act." The third squad was the most dangerous. It aimed directly at the ranch. Small crafts, nimble and fast, almost invisible against the orange sky, darted toward the walls. Calder and Saris ran inside to the main control room, where he tapped into the automated turrets and targeting systems he had rigged the night before. "Remember," he said, "we don't destroy them, we delay them, confuse them, make them waste energy." Saris nodded, moving quickly, issuing commands to the defense drones. The tiny machines zipped around the yard, projecting holographic duplicates of the ranch and itself, darting in unpredictable patterns. The alien crafts fired, lasers striking where nothing stood. Some were trapped by energy fields, unable to maneuver. One ship collided with the ground, not destroyed, but tangled enough to force a retreat. Calder laughed, low and steady. That's how you turn fear into advantage. They expect obedience, they expect logic. We give them neither. The fleet regrouped above the horizon. Calder knew they were not finished, but they were adapting to his traps slower than expected. Every delay, every miscalculation, gave him and Saris more time to fortify. He scanned the terrain with his eyes, imagining where he could place more decoys, how to channel the alien energy beams away from the house, how to keep his home, his cattle, and Saris safe. "You think they'll give up?" Saris asked, her voice soft, almost uncertain. Calder shook his head. "No, they never give up, but they're learning. They're learning humans don't fight the way everyone else fights. They adapt too late." Hours passed in tense quiet. The sun climbed higher, burning the orange sky into pale yellow. Calder and Saris took shifts monitoring the sensors, making adjustments, running simulations. Their trust in each other grew with every maneuver. She observed his instincts, how he read the land, the wind, the movement of shadows. He watched her skill with data and strategy, how she understood alien logic and predicted their moves. Together, they were more than a man and a woman. They were a force, a human mind and a coalition mind working as one. Around midday, the fleet made its final approach. This time they coordinated, sending 3 small crafts to attempt direct entry into the ranch, while larger ships hovered, scanning, ready to fire. Calder hit the final switch. The drones created a moving illusion of the house in the center of the fields, multiple copies projected with light and sound. Alien targeting systems locked onto the illusions instead of the real ranch. Saris's fingers flew across the controls. "Keep them busy. Redirect the pulses, lead them away." Calder adjusted the energy grids, sending pulses in unpredictable sequences. One by one, the ships faltered, then retreated, firing at images of the ranch that disappeared the moment they struck. The largest craft attempted a landing near the hills, but Calder had anticipated this. Automated nets deployed from the ridges, ensnaring the ship without damaging it while its engines overloaded, forcing it back into the air. Saris stared, astonished. "This is genius." "They cannot even touch you." Calder smiled, though sweat ran down his face. "They don't know the land, and they never will. That's our edge. We are everywhere and nowhere at the same time." The fleet finally pulled back, disappearing into the horizon. For a moment, silence fell over Red Mesa. Calder and Saris breathed heavily, the tension leaving their bodies in a slow, releasing wave. Calder slumped against the wall, exhausted but satisfied. Saris turned to him, her eyes softening. "You are unlike any human I have ever met. You do not just fight, you think, you adapt, you survive. That is what terrifies them." Calder laughed softly. "It's all about knowing what you have and making the most of it, that and never letting them think they are smarter than you." She smiled faintly. "I came here thinking you would be easy to manipulate. I did not expect you to be formidable." "You underestimate humans," Calder said. "That is everyone's mistake." The sun sank lower, turning the desert gold and red again. Calder walked outside, surveying the ranch and the fields. Nothing was destroyed, nothing lost. The cattle grazed calmly, the drones hovered quietly, and the energy grids hummed softly. His home was safe. For now. Saris followed him, walking beside him in silence. They did not speak of what would come next. Words were unnecessary. The bond they shared, the trust that had formed in the heat of battle, said more than speech ever could. When night fell, Calder lit the small outdoor fire pit. He and Saris sat near it, the warmth a contrast to the cold desert night. Calder's mind wandered across the stars, imagining the fleets, the politics, the endless civilizations. He knew the coalition would not give up easily. But he also knew something else. Humans had endurance, creativity, and stubbornness in ways no fleet could predict. Saris watched him, her gaze thoughtful. "You are not just a rancher," she said softly. "You are a symbol. One human can change more than any number of ships." Calder chuckled, tossing a small piece of wood into the fire. "I'm just a man who refuses to lose. That's all humans are. We survive. We adapt. We endure." The firelight danced across the plains, and for the first time, Saris felt something she had long forgotten: hope. Not just for herself, but for the humans on this forgotten world. They were small, fragile, and isolated, and yet they had strength the galaxy could not measure. Hours passed. Stars filled the sky, and the desert settled into quiet. Calder stood, stretching, looking at the horizon. "They'll come again," he said. Saris nodded. "Yes, but we'll be ready." Calder smiled, a slow, confident grin. Always ready, that's the human way. For the first time since she landed on Red Mesa, Saris felt the weight of fear lifting. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but more than that, they were unstoppable when they had something to protect. And Calder Horn, simple rancher of a forgotten world, had just shown her exactly how unstoppable they could be. As the night deepened, Calder and Saris stood together, eyes on the horizon. The fleet might return. The galaxy might test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But on this land, under these stars, humans had already won their first victory. Not through power, not through numbers, but through ingenuity, patience, and the stubborn refusal to be defeated. The desert stretched wide under the pale light of Red Mesa's twin moons. Calder Horn stood at the ridge overlooking his ranch, his eyes tracing the patterns of the land he had come to know better than anyone else. Each hill, each ravine, each cluster of hardy rocks was a part of his defense now. Nothing could move unseen here, not if he had anything to say about it. Saris Vale came up beside him, her boots kicking up small puffs of dust. She had been awake for hours, studying the energy signatures of the fleet's retreat and mapping probable return paths. "They will not wait long," she said. "Their next approach will be more organized. They will try to avoid your decoys and your traps. They will try to overwhelm us." Calder nodded slowly, letting the wind blow his hair across his forehead. "Then we give them a different problem." "Not just the ranch, the land itself." Saris raised an eyebrow. "The land itself?" "Yes," Calder said. "We use what we have, not just machines, not just energy grids, the terrain, the cattle, everything they cannot predict." Together, they spent the day preparing. Calder moved the cattle into groups that could act as natural decoys, using bioluminescent tags to create patterns that would confuse sensors. Saris worked on the analysis, predicting likely landing zones and energy approaches. Every ridge, every dry riverbed, every dip in the sand became part of their strategy. By afternoon, Calder had his drones moving in pre-programmed, unpredictable paths, their sensors feeding data to Saris's analysis programs. The ranch no longer looked like a homestead. It looked like a living maze, a shifting puzzle designed to confound anyone who tried to breach it. "You've turned the land into a weapon," Saris said quietly. Calder grinned. "Humans don't need fleets to fight. We need brains and guts, the rest follows." As the sun set, a faint shimmer appeared on the horizon. The fleet had returned. This time the ships moved in formation, faster and more deliberate. Calder and Saris watched from the ridge as the first squads approached, their sensors flaring in the night. "Remember," Calder said, "we don't just react, we force them to react, we make them play our game." Saris nodded. "I understand, let's begin." The first wave of ships descended toward the glowing patterns of the cattle. Calder activated the energy pulses along the fences, causing the ships' targeting systems to misfire. Lasers struck empty desert or holographic decoys, while the real herd moved quietly into safe positions. Saris adjusted the patterns in real time, feeding new data to Calder's systems, predicting the fleet's corrections. "They are learning faster than last time," she said. "That's fine," Calder replied. "We learn faster." The second squad tried to flank the ranch from a different angle, moving along the valleys and ridges. Calder had anticipated this. Small pits camouflaged by dust and rocks disrupted the hovercraft's movement, forcing them to lift higher and slow down. Automated nets rose from hidden trenches, catching two of the smaller ships. They were not destroyed, only trapped temporarily, but that delay gave Calder and Saris precious minutes. "You are a master of simple solutions," Saris said in awe. "These traps, they are not new, but you use them in ways no one expects." Calder shrugged. "Humans survive by using what's around them. Creativity is survival. That is why we last so long in places others cannot." Hours passed, the battle unfolding across the desert. Lasers lit the night sky, holograms flickered, and drones zipped across the plains, seemingly everywhere and nowhere at once. The aliens were fast, coordinated, and technologically superior, but the unpredictability of the land and Calder's genius with simple tools made them hesitate. Every delay, every wasted move weakened their strategy. Saris realized something. The humans on Red Mesa were not just defending, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. No fleet, no matter how advanced, could predict every move on terrain they did not understand. Calder's home, his ranch, had become a living battlefield where knowledge of the land and creativity mattered more than firepower. By midnight, the fleet's first coordinated attack had failed. They regrouped, and Calder saw an opportunity. "They'll try to come in from the north next," he said. "There's a ridge there we haven't used yet. We make them think it's open, but it's not." He and Saris quickly moved the holographic projections, energy pulses, and hidden nets. The northern ridge would be a trap, a gauntlet that would force the ships to slow down and give the ranch another advantage. When the fleet approached again, they fell into Calder's trap. The ships tried to land on the ridge, only to be forced upward by the hidden energy grids. Their sensors misread the terrain, and the drones exploited every misstep. Two ships collided with the illusionary terrain, sending flares into the sky, and one craft was trapped in a net, struggling but unable to escape. Saris let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "Incredible," she said. "They cannot touch you." Calder smiled, though sweat ran down his face. "They underestimate humans. That's always the first mistake." Hours later, the battle finally quieted. The fleet pulled back, their coordinated assault broken. Calder stood on the ridge, looking at the horizon, feeling the weight of the day in his muscles, but also the satisfaction of victory. Saris joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have done what no one else could. You have defended the home not with power, but with mind and courage." Calder looked down at the ranch, his cattle safe, his drones intact, and the land itself proving its worth as an ally. "Humans survive because we adapt, we think, we endure. That is our strength. That is what they cannot take." The nights on Red Mesa were quiet after that. The fleet still circled the sector, but they no longer attacked with full force. Calder used the downtime to reinforce the ranch further, adding more decoys, expanding the drone network, and fortifying every ridge and valley. He and Saris worked side by side, planning, preparing, and strengthening their bond. "Do you ever rest?" Saris asked one evening, watching Calder adjust a sensor array. Calder laughed softly. "Rest is for when the work is done, and it is never done. There is always a new way to protect what is yours." Saris studied him. "You are remarkable. Not just in your skill, but in your mind. In the galaxy, humans are often dismissed as primitive, yet here you are, proving otherwise." Calder shrugged, wiping his hands. "We don't need to be the strongest to survive. We need to be clever, patient, and stubborn. That is why we last." Days passed. The fleet did not attack directly, but Calder knew they were watching, learning, adjusting. He prepared for the next wave, anticipating their strategies before they were even enacted. Saris continued to provide intelligence, her knowledge of the coalition's tactics invaluable. Together, they formed a team that no fleet could predict. The other settlers on Red Mesa began to notice. Word spread quietly among the scattered homesteads. Calder Horn's ranch had survived the fleet's assault, not by brute force, but by mind, creativity, and human will. Other humans began to rally quietly, sending supplies, information, and assistance. Calder realized something incredible. The bond with Saris and the defense of his home had sparked something bigger than himself. Humans were not just surviving, they were beginning to organize, to resist, to stand together. Saris watched the new activity with a sense of awe. "You have done more than defend your land," she said. "You have inspired your people. That is extraordinary." Calder shook his head. "It's not about inspiration, it's about survival. But yes, it seems humans have a way of turning survival into more than just staying alive." The nights grew longer, the skies darker, but Calder never wavered. Each ridge, each valley, each trap was ready for the fleet's return. His cattle, drones, and sensors worked in perfect harmony, an unpredictable and dangerous web for anyone foolish enough to attack. Saris walked beside him one evening as they watched the horizon. "Do you think they will ever give up?" she asked. Calder shook his head. "No, but it doesn't matter. Humans don't fight to win. We fight to survive. And if we survive, we win in ways no one else can see." She smiled faintly. "And you have proven that time and again." The wind shifted, carrying dust across the plains. Calder and Saris stood side by side, looking at the land they had protected, the home they had defended, and the future they were building together. Humans were small, fragile, and often underestimated. But on Red Mesa, they had shown a truth the galaxy could not ignore. Human ingenuity, courage, and resilience were forces no fleet could calculate or conquer. The desert lay quiet beneath the twin moons, the ranch alive with hidden energy and silent strength. Calder and Saris returned inside the house, exhausted but unbroken. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. Still, one thing was certain. Humans had claimed this land, and they would defend it no matter what the galaxy threw at them. As the night deepened, Calder sat near the window watching the stars. The fleet would return, yes. The galaxy would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But on this land, humans had already proved something extraordinary. They were clever, persistent, and unyielding. They did not surrender. They adapted, they endured, and they survived. Saris watched him from across the room, understanding at last what she had only begun to realize when she first arrived. Calder Horn, simple rancher of Red Mesa, had become more than a man. He was a symbol of human strength. And in the quiet of the desert night, under the light of distant stars, humans were proving that no power in the galaxy could predict or control their spirit. The sun rose slowly over Red Mesa, spilling gold across the plains and lighting the distant ridges where Calder had placed his traps and drones. The air smelled faintly of dust and scorched metal, remnants of the fleet's previous attacks, but nothing was broken. The ranch was intact, more prepared than ever, and Calder Horn stood at the ridge, surveying it all with quiet satisfaction. Saris Vale approached him, her boots crunching softly on the hard desert ground. Her eyes traced the horizon, following the faint glimmer of distant ships that had begun to appear on the scanners again. "They are back," she said. Calder nodded, adjusting the strap on his wrist-mounted sensor control. "I expected that. They never learn quickly, but we have time, enough to make sure they cannot hurt this place, or anyone here." Saris studied him for a moment. "You are unlike anyone I have ever met. You do not just defend your home, you build strength while doing it. You make others stronger too." Calder smiled faintly, his gaze sweeping over the cattle and drones moving in precise, unpredictable patterns across the plains. "Humans survive because we adapt. And when others see that, they follow, they learn, they endure. That is how we last." Even from this distance, Calder could see small lights moving across the horizon toward his ranch. Other human settlers had begun to arrive quietly, sending supplies, volunteers, and information. News of Calder's victories spread across Red Mesa like wildfire, carried by those willing to risk travel through dangerous lands. Word of one rancher who had held off a coalition fleet inspired courage in others. "They are rallying," Saris said, her voice calm but full of awe. "Other humans are coming to join you." Calder's eyes narrowed slightly. "Good. Humans are strongest when we are together. That is something no fleet, no empire, no amount of power can calculate." By mid-morning, small groups of settlers had arrived, bringing with them more cattle, basic machinery, and tools. Calder and Saris organized them, turning the ranch into a hub of human activity. Each person brought knowledge of the land, skills in farming, mechanical repair, or survival, and together they strengthened the ranch beyond what Calder could have imagined alone. "This is more than defense," Saris said as they watched the activity. "You are creating a human center here, a symbol, a foothold. Even the fleet will see it soon enough." Calder nodded. "Symbols are dangerous. They make people hope. Hope makes humans unafraid of odds, unafraid of power, unafraid of fleets." As the sun climbed higher, the first wave of the returning fleet descended. Calder had anticipated their tactics. They would attempt coordinated strikes to break the human defenses before more settlers could arrive. But Calder's strategy had grown with him. Drones projected dozens of holographic ranches across the plains, energy grids misdirected their targeting systems, and the terrain itself became an unpredictable maze. The fleet attempted to adapt, sending multiple small crafts to infiltrate from the sides and over the ridges. Calder moved quickly, coordinating traps and decoys with Saris's data analysis. Nets rose from hidden trenches, energy pulses sent ships spinning out of alignment, and drones projected multiple moving targets across the desert. The settlers worked together, following Calder's guidance, learning quickly how to use the terrain and technology. Even small groups of humans armed with basic tools could now delay advanced alien ships by hours, giving the ranch a protective advantage that had once seemed impossible. Saris watched with quiet astonishment. "They are learning faster than I expected. Humans adapt quickly." Calder smiled. "That is what we do. It is survival. We adjust, we endure, we make do. That is why we last where others fail." By late afternoon, the fleet had made several attempts to breach the ranch, each one foiled by the combined strategy of Calder, Saris, and the settlers. Some ships were forced to retreat entirely, some trapped temporarily by energy nets, and others misfired against illusions. Every attack gave humans more time to prepare for the next, and every failed attack strengthened morale. Saris turned to Calder, her expression serious. This is no longer just about defending a home. This is about demonstrating that humans can resist, that they can organize, think, and survive against overwhelming odds. Calder nodded slowly. And that is why they will never forget Red Mesa. They will know humans are not simple creatures to manipulate or destroy. We endure, we adapt, we survive. As the sun sank lower, casting the plains in deep reds and golds, a final wave of the fleet arrived. This time they were coordinated differently, likely having observed the humans' patterns. Calder and Saris had anticipated this. The ranch was ready. Drones flew in intricate, unpredictable paths, energy grids pulsed at irregular intervals, and hidden traps waited along every likely approach. The settlers moved with purpose, their efforts synchronized with Calder's commands. Even without advanced technology, their knowledge of the land and quick adaptation made them dangerous. Each human became a part of the defense, a living extension of the ranch itself. The alien ships attempted to land near the northern ridge, the path Calder had prepared as a trap. As predicted, the ships faltered, misreading the terrain. Holographic projections drew their fire, while energy nets entangled their engines. Two of the crafts collided midair with the projections, and one small craft was trapped entirely, unable to move. Saris let out a breath she had been holding. "They cannot touch us." Calder's grin was quiet but confident. "No." And they will learn that today, the humans of Red Mesa are not to be underestimated. The remaining ships retreated again, disappearing into the horizon. This time, the fleet did not return to probe further. Calder knew they would adapt, but he also knew something fundamental. The humans had shown them that cleverness, determination, and the intimate knowledge of land and survival were more dangerous than any fleet. As night fell, the settlers gathered around the ranch, tending to cattle and machinery, sharing food and water, and preparing for the nights to come. Calder walked through the groups, offering advice, encouragement, and quiet reassurance. The humans were tired but unbroken. They had learned that their minds, their will, and their unity could overcome fear and power. Saris followed him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "You have done more than survive. You have shown them what humans are capable of. That is extraordinary." Calder shook his head. "No, humans do not need to be extraordinary. We just need to endure. That is enough." But even he could not ignore the change. The ranch was no longer just a home. It was a symbol. Other settlers looked to it for guidance. Other humans began to arrive quietly, inspired by the victories, ready to learn, ready to defend. Calder and Saris sat outside the main house, watching the stars emerge across the dark desert sky. The twin moons glowed faintly, lighting the plains and hills that had been hardened into a fortress. "They will come again," Saris said softly. Calder nodded. "Yes, and we will be ready, every time. Humans survive because we prepare, we adapt, and we endure. That is the difference between us and every other species out there." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," he said. "Survival is simple. You keep what matters safe, you use what you have, and you never give up." As the night deepened, Calder thought of the future. Red Mesa would not remain a quiet, forgotten world forever. Word of human resilience of the rancher who held off a fleet would spread. Settlers would come. Communities would grow. And humans, as they always had, would turn survival into more than just staying alive. They would make it a statement to the galaxy. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans survive. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying dust and the scent of life. Calder and Saris watched it together, silently acknowledging the bond they shared, the home they had defended, and the future they were helping to shape. Humans had claimed Red Mesa, and no power, no fleet, and no empire could take that away. By dawn, the settlers were already preparing for the next day, moving livestock, checking drones, and reinforcing the ranch's defenses. Calder walked among them, offering guidance and encouragement. Saris observed quietly, realizing that the humans here had become something more than she had expected. A community, united by purpose, intelligence, and determination. And at the center of it all was a man who refused to lose. Calder Horn, simple rancher of a forgotten world, had become a symbol of human strength. Not because he commanded fleets or wielded advanced weapons, but because he understood the most important truth of survival. Humans endure. The fleet might return. The galaxy might test them again in ways they could not yet imagine. But on this land, humans had already shown that no power could predict their ingenuity, no army could withstand their resolve, and no empire could conquer their spirit. Ceres placed a hand on Calder's shoulder, and for the first time she felt at home on this world. "Red Mesa is ours," she said quietly. Calder smiled, looking across the plains. "Not ours, humans, and we will defend it always." The sun rose higher, painting the desert gold, as humans moved across the land with quiet purpose. Their ingenuity, courage, and endurance had turned a simple ranch into a fortress, a symbol, and a beacon of hope. And in the endless expanse of the galaxy, Red Mesa had become proof that humans, though often underestimated, were a force no one could ignore. As the winds swept across the plains and the twin moons faded from the sky, Calder and Ceres stood side by side, ready for whatever the galaxy would bring. The ranch was alive, the settlers united, and the humans of Red Mesa were unbroken. And in the hearts of humans everywhere, one truth echoed. No matter the odds, no matter the power arrayed against them, humans endure, humans survive, humans triumph. Red Mesa was no longer a quiet frontier world. It was a testament to human strength. And the story of Calder Horn and Ceres Vale would live on, a shining example of what humans could do when faced with impossible odds.